Hello everyone, and I hope you're all doing really well. So I'm working my way through viewer requested videos, and the next one on the list, which I must admit I've been putting off for a while, is can we have kind of page by page history of DCS World and how it came to be what it is now. First of all, I've been trying to put together my own presentation with information from the Eagle Dynamics and other people that I've spoken to, and it became very a bit difficult and a bit ugly, and to be honest, and so I ended up in the end just going to Wikipedia, and I found something basically better than I could ever do. So I've kind of gone round in a big circle, and so what we're going to do is just go through the Wikipedia information together, and then we're going to twin onto that some information that we've got from the CEO of Eagle Dynamics, Nick Gray, which is thank you for that, and we're going to pin it all together and look at how DCS World came to be what it is, because it's a big thing for me. Obviously you guys know how big it is, and it's very interesting. Now, asking me about it is pretty useless, because I only got into DCS, what are we, 2019 now, so it must have been 2015-16. So all I've ever known DCS World as is DCS World. I must have joined when it was well into 1.5, 2015, 2016 something. Since then a few planes have been added. I came in when the Mirage had been added, then the Vigan came out, and then we've had a whole plethora of it, must be half a dozen at least other planes have come out since then. But all I know is the modern version. I don't know anything else. Now, a lot of you guys have got much better memories. You've played the earlier versions, the flanker, the lock-on and stuff like that. I've never known what any of that is. So today I'm going to be learning about this for the first time, which I'm super excited about. Okay, so let's get stuck in. So the first thing first, because this is going to be a kind of a tribute video as well as a history video, let's just assume that everyone's never heard of DCS World before, and let's go through the basics. What is DCS World? Digital Combat Simulator World. DCS World is a free-to-play combat flight simulator. It includes a free Su-25T Frogfoot attack aircraft and a TF-51 Delta Mustang, an unarmed training variant of the P-51D Mustang. DCS is expandable through additional modules as well as user-made add-ons and mods. While the Su-25 and TF-51D are free, additional modules, aircraft and maps developed by both Eagle Dynamics and third-party developers are only available by purchase. Upcoming modules include the F-14, which is out of date now. DCS World is considered one of the foremost flight simulators currently available, with its fully simulated aircraft being meticulously created and accurate for their real-life counterparts. Some aircraft, such as the Hornet and the Warhawk, have cockpit interaction that is identical to the real aircraft, and that's exactly right, and that's what makes, well, it's one of the many things that makes DCS World what it is, and why we've settled on this platform. All of these simulators that I'm aware of are, well, it's not technically, most of these flight sims are free to play. This is free to play. X-Plane's free to play. FSX, I'm not sure if it's free to play, but it probably should be, because that's just how the modern games like this are sold nowadays. And so myself and a lot of you have perused all of them, we've used all of them, and for whatever reason we've settled on DCS World. And the reason we've settled on DCS World is because it's the best combat flight sim out there. I'm slowly working my way through them. I tried IL-2 the other day, and I still haven't tried Falcon, but I've got a good idea of what it's capable of. And although yes, it does have some features that DCS World doesn't have, all in all, we've settled on what we consider the best one available. And it's not best by fluke, it's best by lots and lots of hard work and investment. So anyway, that's my spiel. Let's go and have a quick look. History. So that's what this video is mainly about, and what I don't know anything about. DCS World traces its lineage directly from the Flanker series. Now, I've never heard of that. Have you guys? I'm guessing you have. Of the combat flight simulator games. Eagle Dynamics published DCS World's first predecessor with Ubisoft as Lock-On. Modern Air Combat, LOMAC. The aircraft from LOMAC are still available. So that bit does have me confused. So it says Eagle Dynamics published DCS World's first predecessor as Lock-On, but it traces its lineage to Flanker. So did Eagle Dynamics make Flanker? I'm presuming they did. So really, the first in the lineage is Flanker. So before we go any further, I guess we go and check out Flanker. Ping. And here we are. Su-27 Flanker is a combat flight simulator released for PC DOS. Wow, now we're talking. It's a DOS game. And Microsoft Windows in 1995 on CD. Even the CDs must have been pretty new then. So I remember this time quite vividly. 1995. So I was 15 years old then. So I was just on the edge of video games. I'd done video games as a kid, and when I got to kind of 15, 16, 17, that's when I finished with video games, and I didn't get back into them until my mid-30s, 20 years on. So this is just at the end of what I was doing with video games, which I guess explains why I never got into this. Developed in Russia by Igor Dynamics, so it was developed by the so-called Igor Dynamics. Igor Dynamics is a software company founded by Russian Igor Tishin in 1991. So it started in 1991, based in Moscow, Russia. The company is a leader in developing flight combat simulators and develops Oracle-based products. And this game was published by SSI. The game takes part in Crimea. Oh wow, so it was always been Crimea for the last 25 years or whatever. That's interesting. And allows players to fly the Su-27 across various combat roles. So this was literally just the Su-27. The game also includes a mission editor, allowing the player to create custom gameplay scenarios. The Windows 95 version was first released with the DOS version being developed later. In the comments, you tell me who remembers Su-27 Flanker then. Obviously, I don't. This would be the kind of thing you would buy in a shop. Remember them? And it would be in a cardboard box with a pretty cover. And you buy it, you take the CD out, you'd be all excited, you'd install it, and then you go fly, whatever. So it's by SSI, so this is before Ubisoft platforms. Okay, we talked about that. So the next thing is, let's see where in the world we were with this. So what we're going to do is jump to Su-27, and here we go in Google Images. So these are presumably the control manuals and whatnot, and here are the graphics. Shit, look at this. I mean, I'm not going to lie, it looks pretty terrible, but you have to judge everything by its contemporary. Maybe this was is this what 3D games looked like in 1995? Honestly, I can't remember. I thought they were better than this in 1995, but there's a very good chance that my memory is completely wrong. So I don't want to get myself in trouble. Let's have a look. So we're talking kind of 16 colours and 640 by 480. Yeah, look, 640 by 480. Oh, it's ugly, man. That's ugly. So no doubt I had great programming behind it, but I have to be careful we get the right version. Look, it's even got these old Russian night skins or whatever they were. Got any MIGs? Yeah, we've got some MIGs there. Look, you've got some garage shading there, and you've got a wireframe cockpit. My God, bloody Crimea is not recognisable as it was. Well, there. So what else was that in 1995? Wasn't that Quake and whatnot? I'm not really sure. I can't remember what flight sims were out. Oh, look at the houses. So funny. Interestingly, they've still got the bar down at the bottom that they pretty much still have. That they had ships. So you can see at the time, even though this is, the very beginnings, that you can see what they wanted to do. They wanted to create the Russian flanker and have it as a big, I don't really know the word, but a big battleground that you could configure and make missions. What's the word? Sandpit. They made it from the beginning as sandpit, didn't they? By the looks of things. So I get the feeling that they prioritise kind of realism, flight engine, the whole sandbox idea, the mission editor over the graphics, I'm assuming, probably. Look at that. Holy bananas. 640 by 480. How many polygons on that scene? Not many. Oh, look. Got some 24s? 24s, I think. And there's the mission editor. God, that looks a bit different to what we've got now, doesn't it? But the ethos is still the same. Look, place plane group, place ship group, place ground group. Essentially, it's just a less graphic version of what we've got. It's a flogger, I think. You can barely tell. Oh, look at the afterburner. Look. Now, interestingly, it's got the Lurks vortexes here, which they doesn't even have in the main DCS yet. So that's interesting. Okay. So that's given us an idea. Oh, look, the bear. Well, the bear still looks absolutely terrible in the new DCS. Hint, hint, guys. Get that sorted, please. So, there you go. Next, we're going to go back. Okay, so after Flanker was... So that was we said 95, but I think 1996 actually is. Then Squadron Commanders Edition. Developed by Igor Dynamics, the game contained a realistic and detailed flight model in a less competitive graphics shell, allowing the game to run on minimal computers. That's just what I thought. Yeah, it's like I guessed. So it's not pushing the graphics at all of the time, but it's more based on realism, if you like, a simulation. Okay, then we've got the next big step, Flanker 2.0, released in 1999. Okay, now I don't know anything about it, never heard of it. If we go in here, it doesn't appear to have it, so we'll ignore that. We'll go to pictures of it. So Flanker 2.0, well, we have a marked improvement, assuming these pictures are right, we've got a marked improvement in graphics. So there's the 1995. From that, we've got this, Combat Sim Flanker 2.0. It's not going to load. Try that. Yeah, not the greatest pictures in the world, but you can see the graphics are a shed load better. We've got kind of photo ground, we've got photo proper shady graphics. Let's try that. They're refusing to load at the moment, but load, you swine. So I can't find many screenshots of Flanker 2.0 annoyingly. So so that seems to be up there. So we've got a vast improvement on the graphics. So I'm assuming we're still 640 by 480. Tell us 640. Yeah, still 640 by 480, but we've got much better shading. We've got textures because the previous one didn't have textures, did it? It was just color. So I'm guessing they really, for this version, they really pumped up the graphics, and that's what they've done. Look, they've got fog on the land. They've got realistic looking terrain. So okay, but other than that, it's probably more or less, I'm guessing, the same. 640 by 480 again. These old pictures aren't loading for some reason, which is a bit frustrating. But no, that was lock on. Yeah, so some of these, I'm pretty sure these ones up here were 2.0. Okay, so I don't think we're going to find much more about that. If you know more about 2.0, if you had it, please let me know, because obviously, as you can tell, I know absolutely nothing about it. It's not in Wikipedia. It'll be interesting to know what were the difference between that and the 1996 edition, or the 1995 edition. Then we've got Flanker 2.5, released March 26, 2002, so 3 years later, released as a free patch download in 2001 for Flanker 2.0. So this is a free download that upgraded to 2.0. Now, what was special about it? The game was released as a patch update free for users who already owned Flanker 2.0, but was also available as a fully new purchase. And there's the picture there. And we've got Ubisoft now. So at some point, possibly, I think it was in 2000, Ubisoft have came in. Flanker 2 won PC Gamer's US 2002 Best Simulation Award. I think that had stiff competition as well, because wasn't it around this time we had EF 2000, which was really Sierra Hotel. It was really good. Okay, so that's that. It doesn't actually tell us what the patch was. So let's see if we can get some graphics of it. Here we go. So the cockpit is looking something more like a real aircraft, although it looks like a bitmap. Still looks like a bitmap cockpit rather than a 3D cockpit. Let's see if we can get any of these to load. Yeah. So it looks, one thing I noticed in 2.0 is that it didn't have any cockpit footage. I wonder if the cockpit was still really naff in 2.0. That might be the case, but I don't know. But yeah, that looks like 2D cockpit in a 3D world, doesn't it? I suppose a lot of these are old, a lot of them aren't going to load. Yeah, so look at that. I mean, it's probably good for the time, you know. I really can't, I wasn't here. When was Quake and Quake 2? I did have a flirt with them, and I remember they were pretty good. But I don't know when the time was. That's not too bad. And that's real working mirrors. Look, I'm presuming they're working, not just static. That's pretty cool. So they've really pumped the graphics up, haven't they? Okay, so I'm presuming it's still just a flanker that you can fly. There's quite a lot of photos, actually. I guess a lot of them aren't going to load again. Oh, wow, look at this. Look at that. Now, this is going to trigger a lot of people. But those, I can tell you right now, that B-52... that maybe not the AWACS, that B1 are the same model that they've got in the brand new DCS World. I'm going to start moaning at ED to get this sorted. We've still got that same, literally that same model of that plane and that plane we've got in DCS World in 2019. And it's putting my viewers off from buying DCS. So we do need to get that sorted if anyone's listening. Hint, hint. Thank you very much. So that's nearly 20 years now since that's been updated. So that's that. Anyway, so it looks good. And what planes are flyable? Just the flanker, I presume. In 2.5? Yeah, it must be. Right. Good stuff. So next we've got a change. It goes from Flanker 2.5 to lock-on modern air combat or LOMAC. Now what's that all about? We'll hear from Nick in a bit. But what do we know about the difference, the jump between flanker and lock-on? Is it the lock-on had other drivable aircraft? I guess we'll find out in a second. Although not technically a sequel, it is regarded by many to be. The version included both Russian and American aircraft. I'm assuming that is to fly. Well, it doesn't say when this was. Let's just load that up. Lock-On, Modern Air Combat, or LOMAT, known as Russia as Lock-On, is a modern combat simulator, yet developed by Eagle Dynamics, published by Ubisoft in Europe and 1C Company in Russia, is considered as a survey simulator. I'm not sure what that means by its creators. It contains eight flyable aircraft and over 40 non-flyable AA-controlled planes. The game mainly revolves around air-to-air combat and air-to-ground combat, with some optimal unique roles such as pinpoint anti-radiation strikes, anti-ship strikes, or aerobatics. The game realistically models all aspects of takeoff, landing, AWACS, carrier-based landings for the issues 20 to 33. So it had the 33 was back here in LOMAC. I still haven't seen when this is. What year is? Ah, there we go. And aerial refueling. So note that this is 2003. So let's just go back. So 2.5 was released 2002, and this was 2003. The whole kind of the new separate game, as it was called. Okay, so that's interesting. And we've got 8 flyable aircraft, which is actually that's really impressive for the time. I can't think of any other combat flight sim that came with. I don't think more than just one aircraft. Everything else, I think, had just was based on the single aircraft. So that's impressive. Okay, and let's go and look at the pictures. Right, so now we're looking like a bit like DCS World, aren't we? So 2003, and I've really invested in the graphics. Now, is that a 3D cockpit we're looking at? I'm pretty sure that's a 3D cockpit, and that's starting to look like DCS World. In fact, that's an F-15, isn't it? That really doesn't look dissimilar to our F-15 cockpit. I know it's been jazzed up with better graphics and whatnot, but what's that? I really should know. SU-25, I think. And that's 3D, and that looks good. So this must have been a good-looking game in 2003, mustn't it? So again, a lot of these mesh models, these model meshes, must be the same as we're using in 2019. And that mesh has only just been replaced now that Wags is working on. Okay. Let's say 10. Probably should know. 15 again. Let's have some more exterior shots. That's pretty cool graphics, right? And we've got the resolutions up with 1024, whatever was standard for the time. Don't like clicking on these. It tends to take you to a different game. Pictures. So if I was into games at 2003, I would have snapped this up like a baby. That's DCS World. Ignore that. That is probably Lock-On. So looking pretty cool. I think that MiG-29 model was used until recently as well, I think. Stand to be corrected with everything as ever. I usually get everything wrong anyway, but it's just what I'm thinking. That looks pretty cool. Clouds. So apart from 8 flyable planes, what were those flyable planes? Because in FC3 we've only got 6. That's interesting. Possibly even a MiG-21 look. I'm not entirely sure. So other than 8 flyable planes, guys who did this, what was special about Lock-On? What was different about it? That's interesting. Look at this. So this would be how you used to set up on Lock-On. You'd set up your MiG-29 look. That's very different to how it is. This is all compacted now into a tiny little thing. Interesting. Lock-On Modern Air Combat. Got a lovely F4 there. That's pucker graphics. Again, you have to, everything you have to compare to the time, but it's not a million miles away from what we get today, to be honest. Flogger being shot down. Looks awesome. 15 damage. It's the main difference between this and the other, what I'd call the big simulators, like the X-Plane FSX. I mean, I'll probably get my arse chewed off for it. I prefer the simulator of X-Plane. I prefer to DCS, but there is no combat in X-Plane, or not decent combat. Whereas this DCS is based on combat. Anyway, let's stop dilly-dallying. So that was LOMAC 1. Then came Lock-On Flaming Cliffs. So this is the first word of Flaming Cliffs, and you can now, 2019, buy Flaming Cliffs for aircraft for $10 or $5, whatever it is, for the 2019 DCS World. So let's go and have a look at Flaming Cliffs and see what that was all about. Unfortunately, it's not there. So what was special about Flaming Cliffs? What did that have that the predecessor hadn't? Let's have a look at Flaming Cliffs here. I don't think we're going to get pictures of Lock-On Flaming Cliffs, because Flaming Cliffs is something that's actively in DTS at the moment. Flaming Cliffs 3. Lock on Flaming Cliffs. So this is Lock on Flaming Cliffs. So what was it all about? What was the expansion? Flaming Cliffs 2, Flaming Cliffs 3. I've got an F-15 there. So it looks similar to what it was pre-Flaming Cliffs. So what was, can you guys tell me, please, what did Flaming Cliffs introduce that hadn't been on there previously? It doesn't tell me when it was as well, which is a bit frustrating. Lock on Gold, Lock on Flaming Cliffs 2. Do we have that? That's a bit annoying, isn't it? So we're just going to have a look at some pictures, I suppose. So Flaming Cliffs, oh, we've got Flaming Cliffs 2 here. It's pretty much what we've been looking at. So again, a bit of improvement. Again, I don't know what's the difference between Flaming Cliffs 1, 2 and 3. And I can't work out when they were in terms of years. Wow, look at that. We had an EF2000 in Flaming Cliffs 2. I'm guessing that was a user module of some kind. I haven't even seen one in the latest game. Flaming Cliffs 2 flight manual. Okay, so now it says we went to Lock on Platinum at that point. Now, I've never heard of that before. As far as I'm aware, it actually went to something called Flaming Cliffs 3. So let me know what you guys think about that. So in my knowledge, it went to something called Flaming Cliffs 3, which I'm guessing was just a small improvement on Flaming Cliffs 2, Flaming Cliffs 1. And were these purchased games? Were these 2 3? Were they free upgrades of Flaming Cliffs? Let me know what you think of that, because I'm having to guess at the moment. And then my understanding was, and unfortunately I'm not sure of the date, or I should be able to find out here, was the first, what we're going to call a high fidelity model was going to be released, called the Black Shark. Now, I think this was made by a third-party developer, but I may have that wrong. So up to this point, I believe in Flaming Cliffs 3, which I believe was the latest one, you would have flyable aircraft, the F-15, the flanker and whatnot, but you would have non-interactive cockpits. And they decided at this point to, I guess, separate themselves from the crowd, whatever, and go to their first fully interactive module. And we've got the Black Shark here. Let's see what it says about it. The first module, though not until later referred to as a module, added to DCS was DCS Black Shark. So the first, if you like, buyable plane, I guess. Released in 2008. So we're in 2008 here. So let's just quickly go back ever so quickly. So Lock On, the very first Lock On was 2003. So from 2003 to 2008, we had Flaming Cliffs, Flaming Cliffs 1, Flaming Cliffs 2, Flaming Cliffs 3. Then 2008, we go to the Black Shark. It was released in 2008 as a standalone simulation. Now, I didn't know that. I assumed it was just added on as a module. Originally, it was an add-on for the previous Lock-On Modern Air Combat series, but was deemed necessary to use a different engine, which makes sense, doesn't it? So Black Shark was a different game. Oh, and it was also called for the first time DCS. So at this point, it sounds like they've reached the limits of Lock-On, and they've had to make DCS, and the first, if you like, buyable unit, I guess you call it, of Black Shark. Okay, the second module added to DCS was the DCS A10C Warhawk 2010. So we're talking 9 to 10 years ago. So that's a long time. So this is 7 years before I even got into DCS. The A10C Warhawk, Jesus. That's a long friggin' time, man. So I was making tutorials for the A10C, 8 years after it was released. That's silly. Originally released as a standalone simulation, so this is 2 years later, but offering multiplayer compatibility with Black Shark. It was one of the first native 64-bit flight simulators, okay? Not really sure what that means, to be honest. So we're at Warhawk now, and sorry, if we just pop back quickly and have a look. So we've done Black Shark, and then there was just Black Shark 2, which I guess is 2009. I'm not sure what the difference between Black Shark and Black Shark 2 is. Some kind of expansion, maybe? A10C 2010, and then DCS World, which is where we've got to at the moment. So it was a bit weird, convoluted, and we went back and forward lots, but there we go. And sorry, I'm just going to skip back. I know this is annoying, but I've got a Lock on Platinum here. I just want to have a look at. So I think this is Lock on Platinum, and it may or may not be what they call Flaming Cliffs 3. You guys are going to have to correct me on that. I've just noticed that. I can't, not going to be able to open that, am I? That's annoying. Never mind. Yeah, what's this? Look at this. eBay, Lock On, and Lock On 2, $17. So this is Lock On Platinum. So we're not looking a million miles different from DCS World. I know it's not massively refined. I know this is fairly early, but you know, you got your full 3D cockpit. The textures are starting to look good now. Not sure what that is. Everything's starting to look pretty smart. So this would be the main game. Play, uninstall, register. That's so cool. Platinum. Crappy photo. possible ground units there. Lock on Platinum, Montage. Okay, so that was Lock on Platinum, possibly Flaming Cliffs 3. I don't think we're going to find that out. What's that? Ah, so here's Lock on Flaming Cliffs 3. So it's missed that out, and I don't know when this is in the world. I don't know what time this is. Look, we come through to a website with Flaming Cliffs 3. First release date, April 30th, 2013. That can't be right because the Warhawk and the Black Shark were already out by then. So maybe Flaming Cliffs 3 is indeed something that came out later, once the Black Shark and the A10C had come out. I really don't know. No, it doesn't look like it, does it? Flaming Cliffs 3 integrates with all current DCS World modules and can be played with anyone owning any of these. I get that maybe it's right. Maybe it did come out at 2013 after some of the big modules were in there. DirectX 9. So that all tallies. Let's have a look at the graphics to confirm that. Yeah, this is pretty modern. This is modern, right? So, okay. I knew this wouldn't be a particularly pretty video, but we've got a good idea of what's going on now. These are pretty much the cockpits now in 2019. That's the 2019 cockpit. Right, so we know where this is going now. So let's just pop back to our timeline. So we now know that Flaming Cliffs 2, then Platinum, whatever Platinum was, then Black Shark 2, A10C, then 3 years later, this thing called Flaming Cliffs 3 came out. Maybe it was a module in itself to add on to DCS World. I don't really get that. And it appears to incorporate these guys here. Not include them, but incorporate them. Interesting stuff, anyway. Right, let's get towards finishing this off now, because you've been very patient with me. In 2011, so back slightly, DCS World was launched with a concept of plug-in modules. This allowed using previously standalone simulations in the same scenario while sharing assets. Warhawk was made available as a plug-in module. The DCS Black Shark became DCS Black Shark 2 as part of an upgrade to the simulation. In October 2015, DCS World was relaunched under the guise October 2015. So this is where I come in now. This is where I come in. This is all I know. Or just a bit after this, relaunched under the guise of 1.5 via free update. DCS World 1.5 brought all aircraft, ground units, terrain into new Eagle Dynamics graphics engine Edge featuring DirectX 11. In November 2015, version 2 was released in open alpha format via free update. DCS World 2.0 gained the ability to add new theaters of war such as Nevada, training range, the Caucasus map. The Caucasus map was in the process of being updated and was not yet compatible with DCS 2.0. Okay, in 2017, DCS World 2.1 was released in early access which includes support for Nevada and Normandy maps and new rendering, deferred shading, physically based rendering. You guys will have to tell me what that means. In 2018, DCS World 2.5 was released into beta testing, and this is where we are now. We're on Open Beta 2.5, which allowed for migration to 2.5 on Steam, and from 2.2 Open Alpha, it included a more detailed map of the Caucasus Dynamic Caucasus region, along with a plethora of other changes and additions. The release version of 2.5 was published April 2018. Right, so we've really gone around the houses there, back and forward, but we've got a good idea of what came out in what order and the kind of thinking that was going on. And one thing it hasn't mentioned is that as of, I guess, what we call DCS 1, somewhere between DCS 1 and somewhere between DCS 1.5, a lot of other modules come out. Some of them ED based under the Balsimtech, I think, name, and some of them third party. And that has escalated. It's probably a bit of a vicious word, but it's kind of escalated more and more and more to the point where we're getting, at least a module every month now. And there's something like 30 or so buyable modules now. So it's a really well populated engine now, or sandbox. So at that point, I think we'll jump to Nick Gray's text, which he did, the DCS story. So we're going to have to think back a little bit. 20-something years ago. So we're talking in the late 90s now. I scheduled a key strategy meeting with Igor Tishin and Jim McConaughey. We met for 8 hours in a cheap hotel near Geneva Airport and expressed my deepest concerns. So when are we? We're going to have to go back and look. We're here. We are Flanker 2.0 or before. So we're at this point, we're at really the really nasty graphics kind of point, which is an interesting point to take it on, really. For a number of reasons, I wasn't enjoying the developer to publisher relationship we were having with Ubisoft. I presented my ideas and asked if it would be conceivable to create something completely new, a sort of operating system which would work in a similar fashion to a mini Windows. This world simulation environment would encapsulate all of the core technologies we had developed, and it would come free with a terrain and some aircraft, interface, mission editor, graphics engine, sound engine, network play, physics engine, and a software development kit for module developers, the lot. Upon this OS, we would offer plugins or modules for download via the internet. This would be a permanently enhanced and upgraded OS which would remove all need for distribution via CD DVDs and would permit us to self-publish all of this stuff directly. Right, so this is where they can get rid of their publisher and they can do it all themselves. In the words of Mel Gibson in Braveheart, it would give us freedom. Both Eagle and Jim thought it would be a great idea. Technically feasible, but seeing as nothing like this had ever been done, no App Store or similar existed at the time, it was qualified as non-trivial. Eagle's way of saying very hard and, of course, expensive. Eagle was a brave man and went away with the plan and came back soon enough with a thumbs up. We were away. You know what that reminds me of? It reminds me of a film I watched recently, The Arrow, America, about Canada developing the Arrow, and this guy, this kind of entrepreneur guy, came to the aircraft designers at Avro in Canada and said, hey, I want something that can go 2 times as fast as anything else we've got and twice as high and carry twice as much, and we're fully aware that it's not possible to build, but can you do it for me? And the Canadian technicians shook their heads and said no, and they went home and had a good think about it and came back and said, yes, you know what, we can find a way of doing this if we sweep the wings back and do all this stuff that no one's ever thought of before. Anyway, that's just silly. We were away at the races. I can't remember how long it took us for 1.0 to emerge, but needless to say, it was quite a while and involved many sleepless nights. We discussed the naming very early on. This wasn't too complex a thing to dream up, and our new simulator OS engine was born, DCS World. The rest is history. So that's an explanation from Nick, which is very cool. It showed you what they were thinking at the time and how it kind of happened. So we've now got a good idea of the timeline from 1995 to 2019, what happened and why it happened. So I guess what we can do, as we've got our little Wikipedia page up, is we go to DCS World and just go through the other things. Again, in case there's some first-time watchers here, and you're still with me, which would be amazing, but we'll go through it anyway. Features. DCS World includes mission and campaign editors, yes. Online multiplayer, yes. Larger, and the multiplayer's got really big now. When I joined, even for 3 and something years ago, it was hard to find a server. Now it's hard not to find a server. Multiplayer. Larger area of inventory of air, land and sea combat units, AI opponents, a mission generator, dynamic weather and seasons, training missions, replay system, and pilot logbook. The mission editor utilizes Lua support, which Lua is just allows you to do simple scripting by text, basically. Support and campaign editor for user-created tasks. This allows users to extend provided missions with content created independently from module publishers or create their own unique scenarios. Users of DCS World can host their servers with user-made missions for cooperative and or adversarial multiplayer missions with or against AI units. A dedicated server support is currently under development and testing. I think that's pretty much on the go now. DCS World includes one free map which features a large area of the Caucasus region that encompasses much of Georgia, the location of the Russo-Georgian War in 2008, as well as Crimea, the site of the Russian annexation in 2014. God, it's already 5 years ago. And a portion of Russia's southern border. Available maps include Nevada Testing Range, Normandy 1944, Persian Gulf. Aircraft modelling in DCS. The realism of the aircraft simulation varies according to the type of flight model, the level of system modelling, and the cockpit style of cockpit. The following terms and abbreviations used for different models of simulation are from Equal Dynamics to describe levels of simulation within the DCS world and its modules and may not be applicable to other simulators yet, obviously. Aerodynamic flight models, so how the aircraft fly. There are 4 aerodynamic flight models used in DCS world. Well, I wish I'd read this before, I didn't actually know this. Standard Flight Model, SFM, a data-driven flight model with some predefined scripting for some complex aerodynamic events. As of version 254, there are no longer any aircraft with SFM. So if we went back just a bit, we would see the MiG-29 would probably be our latest one, where we lost our SFM. And that was, I mean, they didn't feel that bad. I mean, maybe they did. I guess we're kind of sport now, aren't they? You didn't really notice they were simple until the aircraft got into something out of the ordinary, like a spin or something that kind of upset the programming, and then you'd know that it just didn't feel right. But they weren't that bad initially, I didn't think. Advanced Flight Model AFM or AFM Plus, airflow and edge of the envelope simulation using multiple points to force application and calculation of the relevant flight surfaces. Scripting of complex events is not used. And augmentation, AFM Plus model, which includes limited modelling of the fuel and hydraulic system weighting, is also included in some aircraft such as Su-25 and A-10A. Okay, I didn't know AFM Plus was a thing, but that's cool. PFM, Professional Flight Model, and expansion of AFM. This level of modelling includes data from complex model wind tunnel simulations, a much more detailed and dynamic aircraft model, for example, taking into consideration deployed or retracted landing gear and the effects of deploying them in flight, complex simulation of flight control movements, complex simulation of autopilot actions, annoyingly on some planes, very annoyingly, and the effect of fluid movements. Wow, yeah, okay, actually I did know that worked, yeah. Fuel and hydraulic on flight dynamics. The level of modelling also includes actual real-world aircraft test data where available. Yeah, makes sense. External Flight Model, EFM. Not sure what this is. A subset of PFM made available for third-party developers. It essentially defines all external forces from the PFM, but allows the developers to calculate and apply internal forces, fluid movements, control surfaces, etc. within their own model. I may need someone to explain that to me. I don't get that. Systems model. So I'm assuming this is Cockpit, but we'll find out. There are two levels of system modeling in DCS World. Standard Systems Model, SSM. Only Cockpit. Yeah, so this is what we would call the low fidelity models. Only Cockpit system is essential for flight navigation and combat directly simulated, although the range of systems needed to be these quite broad. Player control is limited to keyboard, so this is what we called a low fidelity model. Now don't let that put you off, they're still good, and I still prefer flying them in some ways, to be honest. Well, the way I describe it is probably better in that the cockpit, 20 to 30% of these guys of the cockpit controls are interactive passively only. So 20 to 30% of the controls work, and you can use them passively only. Advanced System Modeling, ASM. Basically everything else apart from the low fidelity models. Cockpit systems are carefully modelled, even if they are not directly flight related, navigation and combat. Almost all cockpit controls are functional, allowing the player to interact with them using the mouse, touchscreen, or even certain VR interfaces. This means that for the most part, the aircraft can be controlled via on-screen controls and joystick HOTAS controls, although the keyboard controls are still an option. And yet, we're still talking about the cockpit. So this is what we call a high fidelity model. This is where you can click. Well, again, the way I describe it is probably better. 95% plus of controls in a ASM in the cockpit are interactively, either passively and actively. Basically, it means you can click the buttons. So generally, these are the ones that cost $5 to $10. These are the ones that cost $40 to $70. Cockpit models. 3 Directions of Freedom, a fully simulated 3-dimensional model of a cockpit which the pilot can rotate and to look around and control the level of the camera zoom, head tracking hardware such as tracker are supported as of 2015. But I was going to say there are no longer any of those. Yep, so that's irrelevant. That's how it used to be basically. And this is how they all are now, where you can not only swing your head about in terms of azimuth, but you can move it about. So if you want to see past the nose of the plane, you can move your head over here with your track IR or your VR, and you can kind of go to the right. And I suppose you can't see what I'm doing, but you know what I mean, which is really cool stuff. That's that. And we've got a list of aircraft. Obviously, I'm not going to go through. And in fact, by looking at it, it's only about 20% of them. That looks more thorough there. So that's it. We got there in the end. It was a bit ugly, but pretty much everything I do is. But, you know, like I always say, we get there in the end. It showed us, and we've learned the full timeline now from 1995 when Mr. Igor created Flanker all the way up to 2019 when we've got what we've got now, which is a massive, successful, thoroughly enthralling, interactive DCS world. And it's only going to keep going exponentially from here. Mark my words, it's going to get absolutely ridiculous soon. So it's a good time to be in it. Right, that's all I've got to say. I'm very sorry for boring you for so long. Thank you for sticking with me if you're still here, and see you later.